The sea didn't roar. It whispered. Soft waves brushed against the sleek body of La Lumiere, a private superyacht gliding silently through the sapphire waters off the Amalfi coast. The sky above looked like it had been painted with gold and fire, the kind of sunset people would travel lifetimes for, if they could even afford the invitation. This wasn't a cruise. This was something far beyond. The sky deck, topmost, exclusive, and untouchable, felt more like a throne room than a place for leisure. Polished teak beneath velvet heels, glasses clinking gently on marble tables. And at the heart of it all sat Serafina Miles, the influencer, fashion heiress, and undisputed queen of the digital elite. Wrapped in a lilac silk gown that caught every shade of the dying light, Serafina stared into her camera with that signature smirk. Flawless, curated, and sharp. Private yacht, Amalfi Coast, vintage rosé. This is how we unwind, she said, her voice sweet as sugar but cold as ice. Her followers flooded the stream with fire emojis and wide-eyed hearts. But just as she tilted her face to catch the golden angle, her smile wavered. Someone had just sat down behind her. He didn't belong. Not here. Not in this part of the yacht. His white linen shirt was wrinkled, the kind you'd pack last minute. His sandals looked like they'd seen too many streets. No entourage, no champagne. Just a plain canvas-bound book and a face hidden behind dark glasses. Calm, still, almost invisible, but not to Serafina. She turned slightly, adjusting the camera, angling it away from him. Her smile returned, but it didn't reach her eyes this time. Who was he? He didn't fit the story she was selling. There were rules on this deck, unspoken but known. You could be old money, new money, or royal, but you had to look like it. Presence was power, silence was earned. And this man, this barefoot serenity, wasn't playing the part. She ended the stream abruptly, then signaled to a nearby steward, barely moving her fingers. "That man," she said with a polished whisper. "Do you know who he is?" The steward's eyes flicked to the man, then back to her. Unease flickered across his face. "I believe he's on the guest list, ma'am." "On this deck." Her tone was smooth, but the sharpness in her glance cut through the breeze. "I can check again," he said gently. "Please do." As the steward walked off, Serafina exhaled slowly, realigning her scarf, her posture, her glass. Everything in her world had to stay controlled, curated. But there was something about that man, his stillness, his indifference, that made her feel slightly off balance. She checked her phone. 93,000 viewers before she cut the live. But now, her audience wasn't the priority. He hadn't moved an inch. Still reading, still relaxed, still completely ignoring the storm brewing just a few feet away from him. And for the first time in a long time, Serafina Miles didn't feel seen. Tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. We love seeing how far these stories reach. She stood up, not quickly, not out of anger. Her movements were deliberate, slow enough to keep her pride intact, sharp enough to send a message. The wind tugged gently at her gown as she crossed the teak floor, each step echoing softly in the hush of the upper deck. Guests noticed, even if they pretended not to. That's how this world worked. Polished silence and hidden glances. She stopped at his table. He didn't look up. Serafina cleared her throat, the kind of sound that demanded attention without ever needing to raise its volume. Still, nothing. He turned a page in his book as if she didn't exist. "Excuse me," she said, her voice layered in velvet and vinegar. "Are you lost?" Now he looked up, slowly, calmly. His eyes, warm brown and unreadable, met hers without resistance. There was no fear in them, no confusion, just stillness. "No," he said. Her brows lifted slightly. "This is the sky deck." "I know," he replied. Serafina let out a soft chuckle, polite, but clearly forced. "It's reserved," she said. "Invitation only." He gave a small nod. "Understood." She waited for more. An explanation, an apology, anything. But he simply returned his gaze to the page, flipping it with quiet confidence, like the conversation never happened. She stood there a beat too long, then turned, her smile hollow as glass, and walked back to her table. But something had cracked. She didn't touch her drink. She didn't touch her phone. She just watched him. Minutes passed. 10. Maybe more. Then the steward returned, face pale, voice cautious. "Miss Miles," he said. "He is on the guest list." She didn't react. Not yet. "His name?" she asked, barely above a whisper. The steward hesitated. "Mr. Reeves. Keanu Reeves." For a split second, something shifted in her eyes. Recognition. Number something deeper. Something that felt like the edge of a memory she couldn't quite grab. "Thank you," she said, her fingers curling just slightly around the base of her untouched wineglass. The steward nodded and stepped away. Across the deck, Keanu Reeves flipped another page, as if none of this had touched him. The sun had dipped lower now. The ocean reflected purple, gold, and a touch of black. The luxury yacht shimmered beneath the fading light, the air thick with the scent of citrus blossoms and wealth. Conversation slowed. Even laughter felt staged now. And Serafina? She sat in silence, her back straight, her pride intact, but her mind spiraling, because nothing was more dangerous to her image than a man who had no interest in her world, and yet, somehow, owned it completely. Dinner service began like a slow symphony, gloved waiters gliding across the deck, the scent of roasted sea bass and truffle butter drifting gently through the air. Silver clinked against porcelain, wine glasses whispered against marble. Everything was as it should be. Everything, except her. Serafina Miles sat perfectly poised at her table, but something was wrong, and everyone could feel it. Her usual glow had dimmed. Her smile no longer had that polished ease. She was still performing, but this time, the script had slipped out of her hands. Keanu Reeves hadn't moved. Still seated a few tables away, his book open, his posture relaxed, his attention nowhere near her. And that was the real problem. He wasn't trying to impress. He wasn't trying to defend. He was simply being. And in a world obsessed with presence, his indifference felt like thunder. She couldn't take it anymore. With a gentle flick of her wrist, she pressed the silver service button above her. The soft ding broke the stillness like a dropped pin in a cathedral. Heads turned, only slightly, but enough. That's all it took on the sky deck. A young steward appeared, newer, nervous. His name tag hung crooked. "Yes, ma'am?" Serafina smiled that perfect, too smooth smile. "I just wanted to check something," she said, her tone honeyed and loud enough to carry. "That gentleman," she gestured without looking, "may not be in the correct section. I'm sure it's a mix-up. Mistaken upgrades happen all the time." The steward blinked. "Oh, of course." Keanu didn't flinch. He didn't even lift his gaze. Instead, he calmly reached into his shirt pocket, pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, and handed it to the steward. The screen glowed. "Guest of honor, full access." The steward checked his tablet, froze, then stood a little straighter. "Mr. Reeves is exactly where he's supposed to be," he said, a little louder than necessary. "Skydeck, booth 7, confirmed." Silence. Serafina's lips parted, but no sound came out. A soft chuckle followed. Shaky, thin. "Oh, I see," she murmured. "Well, I just assumed—" But the sentence died in the air. She didn't need to finish it. Everyone had already heard enough. The steward gave a polite nod and walked away. But the silence he left behind wasn't like before. It wasn't filled with polite glances and hidden envy. Now it watched her. Somewhere to her left, someone lowered their glass more gently than before. Someone else paused mid-bite. And just a few feet away, a young woman in a sleek black jumpsuit casually shifted her phone under her shawl, screen still dimly lit. Recording. Serafina noticed. Of course she did. Her eyes went back to her own table. She smoothed her dress, fixed her posture, but her fingers, they trembled, just slightly, because no matter how expensive the wine or how perfect the view, nothing could erase the feeling now taking root in her chest. The narrative wasn't hers anymore, and Keanu Reeves had never needed to say a single word. Her phone buzzed once, then again, and again. The vibrations against the inside of her clutch felt louder than the sea, louder than the whispers now starting to hum softly across the deck. Serafina didn't move, didn't check. She didn't need to. The heat rising in her chest told her exactly what was happening. The video had escaped. She turned her eyes toward the dark horizon, but her thoughts were already racing. This was supposed to be a flawless night, a quiet luxury broadcast to her followers. Instead, she had become the story, and not the kind she wanted trending. One final buzz, longer, more urgent. She opened the clutch with a soft snap. Her screen lit up. 17 missed messages, a flurry of notifications from her publicist, and at the top, one from her niece. Tell me that's not you. Her breath caught. She tapped the link without thinking. A 38-second clip played. No filter, no edits, just the raw moment. This gentleman may not be in the correct section. Mr. Reeves is in the correct seat. Guest of honor. The steward's words, her face, her recovery smile. And then, clear as day, Keanu Reeves, still and unreadable, the ocean behind him shimmering like fire. The caption, entitled woman tries to remove quiet man from luxury deck. She has no idea who he is. 32,000 views. And climbing. Across the deck, the girl with the ponytail had stopped pretending. She wasn't hiding the phone now. She was watching Serafina openly. And others were too. Her control was gone. The image she had spent years building, perfect, untouchable, admired, it now cracked with every tick of the view count. And still, he hadn't moved. Keanu Reeves sat in his chair, a hand on his coffee, a finger holding his page. He hadn't spoken. He hadn't defended. And somehow, he had dismantled her entire moment with nothing but his presence. That was power. The kind that doesn't scream. The kind that doesn't beg to be noticed. Serafina needed to reclaim the room. She always did. She lifted her glass, her voice floating just far enough to be heard. You know what I miss? She said. Elegance. When these spaces had standards. When people knew how to carry themselves. The words were dipped in silk, but the room heard the venom. A server paused. A fork froze in midair. Keanu closed his book. Slowly. Gently. He turned to her. Not sharply. Not with anger. Just with certainty. His voice, when it came, was barely louder than the sea breeze. Most people whisper when they don't want to be heard, he said. You want the whole world listening. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't speak. He went on, his gaze steady. You weren't asking a question. You were making sure someone like me didn't belong next to someone like you. That's not true, she said too quickly. I was clarifying. No. He cut in softly. You were trying to erase me. The words hung in the air. No fire, just smoke. Slow. Inescapable. She had no comeback. Not because she couldn't speak, but because for the first time, she had nothing that would land. He leaned back in his chair, picked up his book, and just like that, the conversation was over. Around them, silence returned. But it didn't belong to her this time. It belonged to him, to the truth. Because in a world that rewards noise, sometimes the strongest voice is the one that chooses not to shout. And in that moment, Serafina Miles learned the cost of trying to erase someone who never needed to be seen to be known. If this story moved you, made you reflect, or challenged how we judge others? Drop a heart in the comments. Have you ever been underestimated or seen quiet strength shift everything? Tell us below. We read every word. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next tale where character speaks louder than words. Because sometimes, silence is the loudest truth.